While the Overworld had seen its fair share of conflicts and reality-bending catastrophes, the scars of such calamity had long since faded, becoming a shadow of history. Through the tenuous existential membrane, however, in a place where time had no meaning, the wounds were still as fresh as the day they had been inflicted. The dejected survivors of the Nether would not sit idle forever though, and they would redouble their efforts to create a world they had so long desired for themselves, no matter what it would cost. Gods had begun. Humanity had all players deep and challenging, with different is less likely to get me horribly No one had suffered more during the Great Blaze and Wither Wars than the people of the Nether. Even though the Overworld had endured apocalyptic levels of destruction, they would recover, and eventually go on to forget about their disastrous past. The Nether was not so lucky though, with the entire realm having been reduced to ruins, shattered portals littering the landscape, reminders of the invasion from the other side. Not only had what little civilization which had existed there been obliterated, but the denizens of the Nether fortresses had even given up their own bodies, becoming the monstrous wither skeletons in order to preserve themselves. The soul sand which resulted from the disintegration of their physical forms, enough to fill entire valleys, the lonely graves of a lost civilization. In their great purge of mortal essence, not all had chosen to give up their bodies, with a small percentage opting to remain pure, a small percentage that would once more go on to change the face of the Nether. While the defeated and soulless skeletons roamed their old empire, the few true weavers burrowed deep into the netherrack, away from prying eyes, and continued their work to create a lush world to thrive in. It was abundantly clear that moving to the Overworld was in no way an option, and although previous research had indicated the Nether was unfit to support an Overworld-like environment, the survivors were convinced that they could achieve something, anything that was not burning lakes and flesh walls. They had created floral life on a small scale before, so it was deemed that all they really needed to do was scale up their achievements, and they would be able to produce lush stretches of wood and grassland, just like that of the Overworld. But it was hardly that simple, for if it was, then their predecessors would have succeeded long ago. Regardless, they made their efforts, and were eventually able to create large, bizarre, fungus-like trees. It was nothing like what they had expected to produce, but it was a step in the right direction, and the hidden weavers decided to quickly release this new strain of plant into the Nether, and watch it spread wherever it could. But to their disappointment, it did not spread, and it seemed as though the Nether was resisting their every attempt to seed life. The setback did not bother the weavers, however, for now they had a basis to work from. Their aim was no longer to create flora, for they now had their overworld-like plants, strange as they may have been. No, now it was their objective to spread it across as much of the Nether as they could. Once again, they worked tirelessly to find a solution, and after years of research, ended up falling back on one of the first things they had ever achieved. Very long ago, they had spawned ghasts from the living rock of the Nether, often believed to be the partially formed spirits of a greater whole. It would be now that the weavers would complete this creature, giving it a true physical form with which it could stride across the lava seas, spreading the seed of their fungal forests far and wide. Whereas the ghasts had been vengeful spirits, forced into a purgatorial existence, these new, wholly complete creatures would turn out to be one of the most passive entities in the whole of the Nether. In fact, it would transpire that these beasts were able to be tamed, and with enough experience, ridden. Not only had they created a delivery mechanism for their new forests, but also beasts of burden that could function as a method of transportation across the vast burning wastes. With the help of these striders, the fungal forests would indeed spread across the Nether, but as there always had been, there would be consequences for the weavers' flagrant manipulation of the natural order. The seed that the weavers had created was meant to be one of life and vitality, where even though it had produced the weavers, the Nether had always been a place of inherent decay and death. It would seem that, despite their willful ignorance of the fact, this is why all of the weavers' previous machinations had ended in disaster, why both them and their creatures were unable to travel to the Overworld, and why these new experiments would too ultimately fail. It could be said that this was proof that the weavers were never truly alive, and that they were only ever a distinct form of undeath, longing for what they could never have. Overwhelmed by the weavers' never-ending efforts to force something upon a world it was never meant to bear, disaster may once more loom on the horizon. For because of their continuing interference, the fires of the Nether may be going out, leaving only vast plains of cold rock, the final legacy of the weavers being to bring death where all they sought was life. The surviving interlopers of the Overworld, however, once known as the Pigmen, would experience this situation quite differently, for as they were not originally of the Nether, the weavers' new curse of life may end up rejuvenating their rotting bodies, giving them a chance at a fresh start, and leaving them as the final masters of the Nether. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did want to support the channel, then please consider subscribing and hit that bell so that YouTube might possibly inform you when a new video comes out. If you want to go that bit further, please feel free to support the channel on Patreon or go and buy some merchandise on Spreadshirt and Teespring. Links are all down in the description. Other than that, have a great day and I'll see you next time.